apologize and say, I know I'm stepping in, but listen, like, this is what's going on. And you guys, I mean, we had been, and I'm like, I could show her another dozen homes, but I don't think you're going to like any of them. And where are we headed here? And I really took a leap of faith on that.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is The Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. Welcome back to The Closing Table. I am your host, Kevin C. McIntosh, and joining us on this episode, we are ready to get some more knowledge. I hope you're ready to learn also. We want to welcome another top producing real estate agent, Kelly Fraasch, to The Closing Table. How are you, Kelly?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be a guest here on The Closing Table and taking time out of your very busy schedule. I love telling my guests that because I know you could be out making some money. So let's do this. I want to learn about you as an individual first, Kelly, before I talk about you as a professional. So if you can, in 60 seconds or less, tell us who you are outside of real estate, please.
Well, I'm a mom of two young adults and an aunt of a fourth grader, sister, a fierce advocate of some issues that I'm passionate about, and devoted friend to a few. I am also a gardener, is a big thing that I do and really enjoy, and just an imperfect human trying to live a healthy and happy life. So
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You say you garden. What type of things are you have in your garden?
Oh my goodness, from daisies to hydrangeas to basically anything. I love flowers, and actually I have a side hustle of being a florist, so I do things for events. So I even try to use my own flowers for this. So
there we go. Shout out to the side hustles. I think everybody should have one. I love that. I love that. All right, so let's talk about your main hustle then, your real estate business. I want you to just describe it for myself and our audience. If you are able to hit on a few key notes, also how long you've been licensed, what you would consider your specialty or niche, and or any notable achievements.
Yeah, so I've been in real estate for about 10 years in the Pittsburgh area, which includes like Allegheny County, but also some outlying areas, Washington, Butler, Beaver, Westmoreland counties. And my specialties, I do have training in senior care for transitions and veterans, but also I would say far more about divorce situations. And then partially because when I came into the business, I was getting a divorce. And so I have that experience and have been able to tweak it to help clients get through that process.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. And that's not the first time I've heard an agent say that they specialize in a certain area of real estate because it kind of affects them or they were affected by it. You know, I know people who, you know, have parents who are elderly, so now they focus on the senior specialist side of real estate. I know people who, you know, like yourself, who have been through divorces, who are now focusing on, you know, the different types of divorce and splitting up and things like that. So I think that's a great thing because you're speaking from experience, also direct experience, so you can relate and have that common ground with your clients. So I love to hear that, by the way.
Yeah, and that's actually how I ended up with the other two as well. The senior transition, when I first came into real estate, my grandmother was transitioning from her home to assisted living. And then we ended up having a cross-country move to get her to family on the East Coast rather than the West. And so through all of those elements, I have some information and some experience to be able to share with my clients. And then a close friend of mine and some efforts through the commission, which we will talk about with Mount Lebanon Community. One of my key areas was veterans. So that's how I ended up in that sector too.
Interesting. Okay, so you spoke on it briefly before. You are in the Pittsburgh area, but let's describe your market a little bit more in detail. I want you to describe it. There's two parts: geographically, first and foremost, paint that picture for someone who may have never been to your market. What is your market known for? What are things to do? Local areas, things like that. Then get into some of the economics, any statistical data when it comes to real estate, numbers, prices, days on market, etc. Please.
Yes. So I moved here about 20 years ago from California, but I was born and raised in Chicago, so I'm a fellow Midwesterner. Uh,
Okay.
so I definitely in the Pittsburgh area. When we first moved here, we purchased a home, and I would say the city itself is a beautiful city. I was expecting smokestacks and everything that you kind of hear in terms of the stereotype, and it's
Right. Yeah, that's funny.
I've lived in several cities, and this is probably one of the top ones in terms of just being beautiful. It's smaller. It's not overwhelming. Like I said, I was born
Mm-hmm.
and raised in the Chicago area. I've lived in DC. We've lived out in California. It's a smaller city. It's got a home feel to it. Housing
Mm-hmm.
stock is older. It's definitely got an older, old world charm. That's what we call it. There's a lot of charm to the housing stock here. We do have new construction. It's further out. Pittsburghers don't like to commute because there's tunnels that go into the city, and nobody wants to go through that tunnel and spend time in that tunnel. And so there's, an issue with in terms of commuting that people don't want to go out too far. But there is a T line that is very valuable for those who live south of the city. They have access to that, and they can take that into the city as well, so they can avoid that tunnel. But
Mm.
housing here, and this is how I would describe it, is that when you see the national statistics, Pittsburgh kind of stays at an even keel, which I like. I don't like these huge, bumps up or bumps down. As long as you're just kind of going at a nice pace, we might have a little bump up or a little bump down, but nothing compared to the rest of the country. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to have that consistency. It's nice to be able to tell our clients that for resale value that they don't have to worry in terms of some of those big down times, that their money is going to stay, invested into a good market. So I would say for this area, there is some nice, what we call new construction, but also like people say newer, and that would be like the 80s, 90s construction. We are mostly, most of our homes are built in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So we have a
Right.
lot of
Right.
elements of things that we have to work on and navigate through while we're realtors to sell the homes here, as well as purchasing them with our clients. So I think that covered all your questions, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, and it's interesting. It's so many different points that you touched on. For one, you coming from different background, different markets, I should say, Chicago, California. So you go from the Midwest to the West Coast, all the way to the East Coast. I know you experience different types of cultures, different types of people, different types of dialogue from different people. So it's interesting you have that different type of experience, and then you bring that all to Pittsburgh. One of the things you mentioned there, and I've had a few different agents from Pittsburgh on as of recently, and so now I almost feel like I'm from Pittsburgh as much as I hear about it. But one thing that you touched on, you said T-line. So is that the one of the public transportations that they have there? It's like what do you call it? Like not a subway, but
Yeah,
what do you call it? Like a
like
train or
train,
something?
like transit. Yeah. So
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, there
like
you go.
Chicago, equivalent to Chicago's loop or the
Mm-hmm.
L.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very small. It's only to one sector of the city. They're the only ones that really truly benefit for it. Obviously, with other public transportation, we have buses and
Gotcha.
other things, but the T is a huge value. And I lived in the southern section of the city, or outside of the city, in a community called Mount Lebanon for about 18 years. And, it was really good for going down to the theater, going to sports to see the Steelers or the Pirates or,
Mm-hmm.
and Pens, and go down there and see them. It was quick access to the city. And then my kids really got an experience to be able to use public transportation in a way that maybe some of the other areas don't get.
All right, interesting. So just real quick, is public transportation used a lot more than people's personal vehicles, or is it a heavy mixture of both, or is it more personal vehicles being driven in public transportation?
Well, I do see a shift. I see that people are becoming more environmentally aware, and so they're wanting to take public transportation. We have some key universities here: University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, just to name a couple. And so they're doing some huge innovation in terms of transportation. We have a lot of driverless cars here. It's not unusual
Really?
to, yeah, I actually 2 weeks ago pulled up to a stoplight and there was a driverless car. And it does give you a moment to think about it, but they are testing them here in the area, and it is something that's very
Wow.
interesting. So we have such excellent, you know, ways to be able to learn from our universities, and that is one in which we get information out to the public about environmental impacts and other things. But also, I do have to say that the Pittsburgh
Hmm.
area does not like I said before, their traffic time. Even though that some people have never lived in Chicago, never lived in LA, never lived in DC, they have no idea some of these hour and a half, 2 hour commutes. But
Oh yeah.
but when I'm sitting there for 20 minutes, I'm like, that was so easy. But
Man, I know, right?
they're like, no, if your car has to stop at all, there's a problem with some people here in the area. So
That's a fact. I was just in Chicago over the weekend, and depending on when and where you move, like you can hit some crazy traffic.
yeah.
So I get it. I get it. That's funny. So you spoke on being in an area, Mount Lebanon, if I'm saying that
Uh-huh.
right. You are a resident there, so I want to talk about that because I see you were also a former commissioner of Mount Lebanon. So correct me if I'm wrong. You played a role in planning and development decisions, which can include zoning, land use, economic development initiatives. So how has your experience in that position shaped your perspective as an agent? Do you have any examples of a development decision that you made as a commissioner that benefited you and other agents possibly?
Right. So Mount Lebanon is a little community. It's about 36,006 square miles. And it was a wonderful community that I raised my children in. And I served for 8 years as a commissioner there from 2012 to 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
there are certain elements that, as a commissioner, you're not allowed to participate in development. There is a certain panel, and there's a certain group of people that, or citizens that are actually appointed to be able to make some of those decisions for the community. But just to explain a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, we are that community is actually how it's run is that there are 5 commissioners. There's no mayor. There's a manager, but the 5 commissioners are truly running the community and giving direction, giving vision, and giving direction for the day to day to a degree. Obviously, the manager is the true day to day, but I would say there were a lot of times where it was super helpful that I was a realtor, and then there were a lot of times where it did collide. And it is unfortunate because as a realtor, I see certain things that incoming people, that are wanting to purchase and wanting to buy, are looking for. And then there's the community of residents that are currently there that have different needs and wants and desires than maybe the general public. So
Mm-hmm.
there were several of them, but I did sit on an economic development board for, I want to say, 3 to 4 years of my 8, and I really enjoyed it. We did a lot of things in terms of boosting awareness for mobility and accessibility in the main street districts. So there are two, even though it's 6 square miles, there are 2 main street districts for that community, and so there were some elements of allowing for people to be able to shop and eat and do things in that community that were important, that everybody had access to it, as it is an aging community and more people
Mm.
have to deal with those issues. So and I do think that that's overall a lot of communities are addressing those issues. And so it was important to me as a realtor also to say, we're having people moving in, whether they're families or elderly or whatever. We need to make sure that they're getting to and from safely, and that they're they're enjoying our community in every way that they can, whether it's recreation or our park systems or whatever it was.
Right, right. Interesting, interesting. What stood out to me is the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania does not have a mayor. It has commissioners and a manager. It's interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
And
Learn something new every day.
So,
Said 2,000 people?
no, 36,000 people.
Oh,
So,
36.
and it's 6 square miles, and it's only 5 miles from the city of Pittsburgh line, so it's very, very close to the city.
That sees like a lot of people within a 6 square mile radius. Does that sound crazy?
No, it's definitely a lot of people in that.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Let's talk about your work in the community. Volunteer events. Any volunteer event that you have participated in or that you currently participate in that is near and dear to your heart?
Yeah. So it was interesting when I was thinking about this. So in June of 2022, my family went from a family of 4 to a family of 3. And I have 2 biological children, and then I had a child who I considered to be just as close to as my biological children. And she was moving home from Colorado and ended up passing away 3 weeks before she came home. And
sorry to hear that.
So we just had this past weekend an opening, ribbon cutting for a pollination garden, which is in our community. It's about a block and a half from our home. And I now live in Edgewood, Pennsylvania, which is east of the city, just past the Squirrel Hill Tunnel, which most people that are familiar with Pittsburgh will know. And so Daisy is her name, and Daisy had a passion for the environment. And one of my last conversations with her was very long. We were planning for her to come home, and we tended to have lots of conversations that were very long, but I was swatting at a bee while I was FaceTiming with her, and she gave me a lecture for about 20 minutes about how bees are important to our society, to human. I got the whole gamut, and then finally, when she was done and took a breath, I said, "Are you done?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "That was a loss." And
Good one.
She said, "Oh, that's okay. They're jerks." But
that was a good one.
But actually, on her 21st birthday, what would have been her 21st birthday this past March, I was really struggling with trying to figure out what to do for her friends and loved ones that wanted to make her birthday special. And we ended up partnering with the Humane Action Pittsburgh and doing a pollination garden and starting to clear the land for it. But we had extra plants, and Edgewood Borough was so gracious in giving us space. And so I have been, for all summer long, was watering and tending to what is 7 small pollination gardens going up a hillside in her memory. So that has been my focus for the last couple of years. And then the other one is I usually am mentoring women who are considering going through a separation or a divorce. And it's called Catch and Release. And it's just a free something or other that I help them figure it out. I was married for 15 years and should have probably left that marriage way beforehand, and didn't know what to do and didn't know what resources were available to me or even how to make that first step. So I have women, and I had a couple of guys too that have reached out to me and asked what they can do. And I provide that service to, not a professional service, but just provide them with that information to help them make the right decisions for themselves and for their family.
I love that you do that. I know I said that before. I love that. I just love when people go through a certain situation, especially a situation where sometimes you can feel like you're alone. Sometimes you can feel like you're the only person in the world going through this. And that's the thing, you go through it, which means there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, everything that we've been through, we've gotten through it. So the fact that you've used your experience of going through that to help others and let them know that they aren't the only ones. You can, that you have someone you can talk to. These resources are available to you. I love to hear that. I love to hear that, because it's an unfortunate event that nobody wants to go through, but it happens. And when it happens, a lot of people need support like that. So
Well, I think
beautiful,
one of those
beautiful, Kelly.
things is like, as we are human, like, things to be
Mm-hmm.
able to give to other humans back. Like, well, there was a purpose for
For
this
sure.
this challenge in your life, so make the best of that challenge and help others with it as well.
I agree. I agree. Well said. Can you recall an instance where you worked with a home buyer who had a strong desire to integrate technology or some type of smart home features into their home? And how did you, assist them in finding the right property where they can actually integrate these technology advancements, I should say?
Well, like I mentioned before, our housing stock is a little older. So normally, if somebody starts to mention that they're working in technology, a part of something like that, we have a lot of government people who live here, and they need to have, resources for technology, for safety and
Mm-hmm.
security and
Mm-hmm.
privacy and those kind of things. So if somebody starts to mention that to me, I immediately, it's almost like I zone in as soon as I walk in the house to go look at their electrical panel and make sure that it's all in the place that, everything is where what they might need. And if not, that they know that they might need to do some upgrades. Because, like I said, our housing stock is a little older. We
Yeah.
can't guarantee that certain elements are going to be there for what they need. And just being able to go through that. And I've had now a few in the last few years that definitely we've had to go through the considerations of one house over another because of that, because it's just not
Yeah.
capable of being able to do what they need in terms of that. And then new construction, that's always kind of the go-to at the end of the
There
day
you go.
of,
Yeah.
if you want to. We also have a lot of circumstances where we have a lot of investors that are coming in here, not only just knocking down homes and rebuilding in neighborhoods, but they're also doing some major renovations to homes that definitely needed it. And in those places, sometimes we find the correct and adequate needs for our clients.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, now that I think about it, you did tell me most of the homes were built like almost 100 years ago. So I can see those probably wouldn't be the easiest to start putting like smart thermostats and cameras and stuff around. But, what you do in your job, checking, looking at the wiring and, reaching out to your resources of electricians or whatever the case may be to see if it's built or capable of even holding that type of technology is a smart thing to do, first and
Yeah.
foremost. Just a random note. I thought about, you saying, the homes being built in like the 1920s and whatnot. And I've had different agents from Pittsburgh talk about the different basements, some of the basements that happen and somehow how
I
they
knew that
have
was
toilets. Yeah.
come
So you're from Pittsburgh, so the Pittsburgh toilet is something
It's
that I heard.
right.
So
There's
yeah, so
there's actual
I heard,
books on it. Like you could actually, I was waiting. Yeah,
really,
people have done books on the Pittsburgh Potty. So yeah, and it
I
depending on
can.
who you are, and that actually gives me my indicator for my clients, whether they like it or whether they absolutely don't. Give me an idea of their tolerance level for fixes and non-fixes, because it's either
Yeah.
really cute and charming or it's really not.
I imagine so, but I compared it to like Detroit because those homes were built during the time where Pittsburgh was actual steel city. So I compared it to Detroit because that's probably around the time Detroit was going good with the automotive industry, and a lot of homes around there were built for some of the workers and like some of the things that they would do. So some of the garages have like upper levels where you can kind of either do work or live, and like multi-purpose type of living areas. So I just want to note that out there. It was a random thing that I thought of with that.
And I think
But
that it's important to say that
please.
because, access to the outside from so what you're talking about, just to explain it a little bit, is that
Mm-hmm.
when everything was steel mills around here, workers would come home and they go straight down to the basement. So there's always an access
Yeah.
point from basically the backyard or the side yard to the basement. And there's usually a Pittsburgh Potty, which is like a toilet with typically no walls. It's just right there. And then sometimes where we call luxury Pittsburgh Potties, where they actually have a little sink and they might
Oh,
have one little like shower spout. And I'm telling you,
what?
yeah, this is the true luxury of the Pittsburgh Potty when they have those. But you should see
I know.
if they do have walls, they're like the walls like in a public restroom. They're like the little slats and might have a door
Oh,
that like flings open and shut. And so and again, some people do them really nicely and they paint them all up and they look all cute and charming and stuff. And
mm-hmm.
some of them are pretty spooky and probably best, for the Halloween season.
I would imagine real quick. I would imagine you've had some clients who felt like that would be a deal breaker, correct?
Well, they get concerned, like, yeah, because they do look. Most of them look a little drabby, like they could be an issue later on, um, element. So, but then some people see them as a true benefit that if they want to finish that basement and that basement's unfinished and they have that, then they could have a full bathroom
Yeah,
typically in
yeah.
that area. So,
No, I agree. I agree. It depends on how you want to look at it. It's all about perspective at the end of the day.
yeah.
So you as a mom, I see that you also have a passion for helping other moms and families, specifically children with chronic illnesses. Can you describe a time where you may have built a connection with a mother or a family that you also helped get into a home who may have been experiencing this?
Yeah. So, well, just to give you a little background, my oldest child was born at 23 weeks. She was 1 pound, 4 ounces, and that was almost
Oh
23 years ago.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh
So,
wow.
she had quite spent 9 months in the NICU and everything, but today she goes to school. She has a job and she's doing very well. But there was a long time frame in which we had a lot of work to do and
Right.
not just from her medical and physical well-being, but everything else too to truly catch her up. So I have had a couple of situations and a couple of clients where they actually have gone through and gone into premature labor while we have been in the process. And
Mm.
yeah, and I actually had to have a closing company go to the ICU to sign off on documents. So we have had those
Really?
situations for sure. And to be able to support those families while they're doing that, because the last thing they want to think about is the home that they're buying. They need to be focused on their child, and that's what I'm here
Yeah.
for, is to just do all that other stuff and get them to a place where they feel comfortable bringing home their child and the long-term outcomes of, a good school district and those things that they ask me for and me providing the statistics for whether it's special education or something else that they may need later on down the line.
Interesting. Interesting. Another thing that I'm happy that someone is aware of and like to help families in those type of situations, especially once again it shows that you've experienced things like that and you're choosing to reach out and help people who are in similar situations or maybe experiencing a similar situation.
Right. Yeah.
You said something when I was looking you up, Kelly. You said something. This was interesting. It was an analogy of jumping out of an airplane and enjoying the ride, even when you don't know the outcome, resonates strongly with your approach to life. That's what you said.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. So, can you share a story from your real estate career where you did take a leap of faith, so to speak, and how it resulted in a particularly rewarding experience for yourself and or client?
Yeah. So I kind of use that analogy because I have jumped out of an airplane. My 40th birthday
Ooh,
I did, um,
ooh,
and you have no control, right? Like it is complete faith in whatever's out
mm,
there that you believe in, and the experience truly it might be a one and done, but it definitely had changed me completely in understanding some elements of my life. Um,
mm,
so in this, I would say, um, I tend to, like I told you before, I tend to take a lot of cases in which a couple's getting a divorce. And I actually get a lot of referrals from within my brokerage, but outside of my brokerage, because it's tough. These people are going through a tremendous amount of grief. They are angry, they're sad, they're all these different
Yeah.
things are going on, and whether they have children or not, it doesn't matter. They're going
Yeah.
through what is a dream that's been broken. And
Mm.
and I understand that. I completely understand that. I've had several big dreams in my life that have been broken, and it's just hard to deal with. And it's almost like one step from the other, and just in faith that you will get onto that other side. But I would say that I had one situation with a divorce with a couple that was divorcing, and they were actually doing very well. They were each looking, we had put their home on the market. They were each looking for their own separate home. And that was a lot going on. I mean, they're going through a
Yeah.
divorce. They're doing all these things. They're moving from each other. They've been married for a very long time. And they truly, truly, like, very much deeply cared about each other. So that part was kind of sad for me to watch, that this was not going to be working out for them. And
Yeah.
but one thing that I was seeing during that period of time was that they each wanted input from the other one of the house that they were looking at. So once we got down to, a top few, like, we would all go out and look at these homes together. And what I did notice through the grief process is that the husband was, like, downplaying every house that she liked. It was just,
Oh,
was
wow.
having a hard time letting go, right? And he was having a hard time with everything. Again, beautiful. Like, if there's going to be a divorce that happens in such a positive way, this was what was happening with these two.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
So I ended up taking a leap of faith, and I stepped aside with him and I said, listen, you guys have made a decision. Please help her to move on. Like, let her move on and give her the chance to feel that this decision's a good one, and make it positive for her, because she's going to remember this the rest of her life. And he took a second, and I thought, I could either like and I even apologized and said, I know I'm stepping in, but listen, like, this is what's going on. And you guys, I mean, we had been, and I'm like, I could show her another dozen homes, but I don't think you're going to like any of them. And
Right.
where are we headed here? And I really took a leap of faith on that. And literally, we were all really quiet, and they left, and I went back. And I had a text later that evening, thank you for saying that. And then she, maybe 10 minutes later, texted me, and she said, I want to put an offer in on this one. And they moved forward. And again, they're in beautiful homes. They have great lives, and they're friends, and they actually live in the same neighborhood. And so
Oh,
it's
that's
funny
nice.
that they chose homes in the same neighborhood, but it was definitely a moment in which I felt it was a huge risk, for sure.
Ooh, Kelly, you took. Oh my God, you better than I would, because that is not my business.
I
I'm gonna tell you
know,
right now.
but it just
But
for her benefit. Like, it's
mm-hmm.
she's not going to
Yep.
remember him any other way, right?
I feel it. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was so positive at that point, but then it was becoming a problem between the two of them.
I love that, because we've all had those moments where you feel something building up inside you so much. You're like, I have to say this. I at least have to try, and you did it and it worked out. But man, I'm telling you, the average person would be like, let me just stick to the transaction. I don't want to get involved. But I got to shout out to you, because that was good work right there. That was good work. That could have went either way.
It could have gone
So good
totally
job.
sideways. It could have definitely gone sideways. But I
Good
also
job.
knew that I didn't want to be okay, or I didn't want to be just like a person standing by when it could have been better, when we could be doing a better thing for her. And that's kind of what made me make that decision quickly. Was, I'm like, could this be better for her? Yes. Let me just pull him aside. I didn't call him out in front of her or
Right. Good job.
we got to do this differently for her.
Good. Hey, Kelly, someone's watching this video right now, in the Pittsburgh area, and they are aspiring to own their first home. And they're saying, Kelly seems like she's giving some great information. I like her. But what would she do in today's market, if she was looking to own her first home. So I want you to give this advice to one of our listeners. In today's market, today's conditions, what approach did you take to earning your first home?
Well, and I will say this too. I had a marital home that we bought together when we first moved here to Pittsburgh. But I bought my very first place in 2021. I have a condo here in Edgewood, the small but mighty condo. And and it was my first experience by myself, purchasing a home. And the first thing that I do have to say is that I spent 5 years between leaving my marital home to purchasing this condo. 5 years at $1,600 a month. You can add that up. It's a lot of money that just sank me, that I was a single parent of kids and putting that money to, a situation in which I could have kept that for myself and invested it into a property. So I did for quite some time put a little bit of money aside, and I'm seeing that some people are starting to do that again, but they weren't for a while. I think the pandemic kind of people were reaching towards their savings and other things to make it by financially for a while. But going back and regrouping, deciding what their priorities are, and financially investing in something, even if it's smaller for a period of time, to get you to that next step into a home. So I have right now a first-time home buyer, and she really can't afford single family, all the things that she wants, but she could afford a condo, townhouse, duplex, build that for a few years, and then be able to purchase a home later, rather than putting all of her money into rent for the next few years. So just making a plan. And I think people have gotten so into trying to figure out some other things in their lives with the pandemic that going back to thinking, okay, if I want to own real estate, I got to put somewhat of a plan together to get there, and financially making yourself more, financially stable and viable, and being able to put some money down is helpful.
I agree, especially in today's day and age. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for coming to the closing table, pulling up and sharing your knowledge with me and our audience. We appreciate that. At this time, if you have any last words and or want to tell people how to reach out to you, please do so now.
Well, thank you again so much, Kevin. This was a great experience. Wonderful meeting you and getting to know somebody from the Midwest a little bit, and having this opportunity. So I am here in Pittsburgh, and most people see me as Kelly Sells Pittsburgh, or Sells Pittsburgh is a little bit of my tagline. So usually you can find me on any social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, any of those things. And my information, I have a website and all of that as well.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much again, Kelly. And for our YouTube audience watching right now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, do us both a favor and hit the like button, please. And thank you. Make sure you also share the content and subscribe to our latest content. Subscribe to our channel. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, any other podcast platforms, please do the same. Give us a like, 5-star rating, and subscribe for our latest content. And Kelly, I'm always going to leave our audience with a question before they leave the chat to get their brains going. So this is for you, audience. If you are a parent looking for a home, do you prefer an agent who has kids too? Why or why not? Don't tell us now. Leave it in the comments below. Besides that, I'll talk to you next time.